Hey Lakeway friends and family, Pastor Mike here with a little bit of midweek motivation for you. Hope I found you all healthy and well. The past few weeks for my midweek motivation, I've been sharing some verses that have been meaningful in my life. And today we want to look at one from 2 Timothy chapter 1 verse 7. It's a really interesting verse. It says, "For the Spirit God gave us does not make us timid, but gives us power, love, and self-discipline." What a great verse. Now, 2 Timothy was a letter written by Paul to Timothy. Timothy was sort of an apprentice to Paul. He accompanied him on many of his missionary journeys, on much of his work. But at this time, Paul is in prison. Actually, he's in a dungeon in Rome, and Timothy is in Ephesus. Now, Timothy has reached that point in his ministry where he is no longer subordinate to Paul. He now works alongside Paul. He's been disciplined. Paul has taught him. Paul has instructed him, and Timothy is at work. But they're separated, and Paul's not sure if he's ever going to see Timothy again or when he will see Timothy again. So he writes this letter from the dungeon, and he wrote it to instruct, encourage, and urge Timothy to continue on in the work that God had called him to do. Now, these were really tough times. They were times of uncertainty, much like the times that we live in right now. There was a lot of opposition. There was a lot of false teaching. There was persecution of the church. It was very, very difficult. And Paul wanted to encourage Timothy to keep on doing the work of the Lord, to be bold and to not be afraid. It's a great letter. And I just love this verse, 2 Timothy 2:7. "For the Spirit God gave us does not make us timid, but gives us power, love, and self-discipline." So let's dive into this a little bit. The Spirit God gave us, every single believer, every single follower of Jesus Christ. When you ask Jesus to come into your life, you say, "I want to be a follower of yours. I want to trust you, Jesus." The Holy Spirit is deposited within you. It's not something special that happens later. As soon as you trust in Jesus Christ, that is what gives us the power for transformation to live a new life. And Paul is saying that that Spirit does not make us timid. Well, what is the opposite of timid? It is boldness. So Paul is instructing Timothy to be bold. He's saying in these times of uncertainty, Timothy, this is not a time to hide. This is not a time to shrink back. This is not a time to live in fear. This is a time for boldness. This is a time to step out. The Spirit that God gave us does not make us timid. And he's instructed him, get out there, to live a life of faith, to step up and to step out. The Spirit God gave us does not make us timid, but gives us power. Well, what is the power that the Spirit gives us? It's the power to do whatever it is that God calls us to do, that the Lord calls us to do, to live a life of faith, to step up and step out. Anytime that the Lord calls you to do something, and the Lord calls every single one of us to action, he empowers us to do it. He gives us the power to do what he has called us to do. So Paul is saying to him, you know what, Timothy, this is a time for boldness. This is a time for power. You've got the power. Gives us power, love, and self-discipline. Love is such a motivator. Love is such a driver, isn't it? People do crazy things for love. It was for love that Jesus went to the cross. It was for love that Paul was executed, and all of the other disciples lived their life driven by love, and most of them were martyred. Love drives us to do stupid things too sometimes. I remember when Sandra and I were first dating. Well, not when we were first dating, but when we were first in those throes of love and starry-eyed. Neither of us had a car. She lived in the country. I lived in the city. And I used to have to get a bus to go out and visit her. In the daytime, the bus stopped about a half a mile from her house. That wasn't bad. But the bus to come home at night was 3 miles away through windy lanes without sidewalks, with no street lights. And every time I would go out to visit her, I'd walk those 3 miles on those dangerous windy lanes because love. I was driven by love. So it says, "For the Spirit God gave us does not make us timid, but gives us power, love, and self-discipline." Self-discipline is that attribute that we need to keep on when the chips are down. when fear is evident, when everything seems to be against us, when we're scared, when we're uncertain, self-discipline is what causes us to just keep on keeping on. And Paul is saying to Timothy, you've got that discipline. Sometimes I wonder, when God calls us to do things, sometimes we look at all the things that we can't do, but oftentimes I think it's what stops you from doing it? What is getting in the way of you following God, fully following Jesus, being a disciple of the Lord? And self-discipline gives us that ability to overcome those things that get in the way. So putting it all together, it's saying live a bold life driven by the power of love, unencumbered by self-doubt, selfishness, and self-destruction. The power to live a holy, love-focused, love-driven life. Let me ask you a question. If love was driving your life and you were able to overcome fear and be empowered to do that which you normally would shy away from, what would change? What would you do that you're not doing now? What conversations would you have? What relationships would you develop? Where would you step up and step out? What would you stop doing that's hindering you from fully living for the Lord? So let me tie this together. Here's what Paul is telling Timothy. Everything that you need to live that way is already in you. You have the boldness, you have the power, you have the love, and you have the self-discipline. You just need to go do it. In the verse right before this one, Paul encourages him to fan into flames the gift of God. The gift of God is the Holy Spirit. I got a challenge for us. Let's make a commitment to be bold for Jesus, to not live timid lives, even though the times are uncertain and the times are fearful. Maybe this is the time when we've got to step up and we've got to step out, to live in power, to live in love with self-discipline. What if all of us chose to do one bold thing for Jesus Christ every week? Each week we just thought, man, I'm going to do something bold for Jesus this week. Wow, what a difference that could make, eh? If there was one thing you could do this week, one bold thing, what would it be? You've already got a spirit of boldness. You've already got the power. You've already got the love. And you've already got the self-discipline. Go do it. Hey, I love you all, Lakeway. Looking forward to Sunday. See you then.